give them a hand. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
To share music with you this afternoon. We have chosen music from England that would have been known in Shakespeare's time, but whether he knew the music or not, we don't know. We do know that Christmas in Shakespeare's time was a season-long celebration that began on Christmas Eve and lasted for 12 days until January 6th. People decorated with greenery like holly, ivy, and bay. They burned a Yule log during that 12 days. They sang carols, danced, played games, and wassailed, which included sharing a bowl of a hot spiced drink, and I really can't tell you what all was in the drink. They visited neighbors and embraced under a kissing bough that was a wreath that had mistletoe on it. And the wealthier landowners were expected to provide a feast to their tenants that were in at least once in all of those 12 days. There was a Lord of Misrule, who was a clownish figure who organized festivities, which could include plays, games, and performances by traveling mummers. During that time, the English celebrated 5 feast days. So December 25th, you know, is Christmas. December 26th is the Feast of St. Stephen. December 27th is the Feast of St. John. December 28th is the Feast of the Holy Innocents. January 1st, Feast of the Circumcision. January 5th, 12th night, Epiphany Eve. So there are plenty of reasons for celebrations during that time. And Shakespeare never wrote a play about Christmas that told a Christmas story, but there are a couple of references to Christmas, the last one being in the prologue to The Taming of the Shrew. And as have you heard in our first piece, a boar's head on a platter carried in a procession to the table was also a tradition that is still carried on in many places today, often in conjunction with a Christmas program. And if you want to know where the closest place is to have a boar's head feast, you Google it and you see. It's mostly in colleges, but there. Mystery plays and miracle plays are among the earliest formally developed plays in medieval Europe. And a medieval mystery play focused on a representation of Bible stories within the church service. Often they were performed together in cycles that could last for days. The name derives from mystery used in the sense of miracle, but occasionally it is determined to come from the word ministerium, which means craft. So often these mysteries or plays were performed by craft guilds, and they went from town to town performing. This tradition began as early as the 5th century, when living tableaux were first introduced into sacred services. And these became quite popular later in the Middle Ages and somewhat later as many traveling troops would travel from town to town, and especially during the Christmas season. Lulay, thou little tiny child, bye-bye, Lulay, Lulay. O sisters too, how may we do for to preserve this day? This poor youngling for whom we do sing, bye-bye, Lulay, Lulay. Herod the king, in his raging, charged he hath this day, his men of might in his own sight, all young children to slay. That woe is me, poor child, for thee, and every morn and day, for thy parting neither say nor sing, bye-bye, Lulay, Lulay. The tradition of wassailing falls into two distinct categories, the house-to-house wassailing and the orchard wassail. And we're more familiar with the house-to-house version, but in the orchard wassail, they went and they blessed particularly the apple trees to have good cider the next year. This practice still exists, but it's largely replaced with carol singing. So if you think of people going around singing carols at various places, that comes from the idea of wassailing. The lord of the manor would give food and drink to the peasants in exchange for their blessing and goodwill with the words, love and joy come to you, and to you your wassail too, and God bless you and send you a happy new year. And those are the words that we usually know with the song, Here We Come Wassailing. But we are going to be playing the Cornish wassail and the Gloucestershire wassail, and I could probably have added at least 5 more English counties of wassails. And the words, some of the words of the songs we're playing are, now Christmas is coming and the new year begin, pray open your door and let us come in. With our wassail, 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 and joy, come to our jolly wassail. Wassail, wassail all over the town. Our toast it is white and our ale it is brown. Our bowl it is made from the white maple tree. With the wassailing bowl we'll drink to thee. And then there are a whole bunch of sort of nonsense verses, such as, here's to our horse, and to his right ear. God send our master a happy new year. A happy new year, as ere he did see, and my wassailing bowl I drink to thee. Or, come butler, now fill us a bowl of the best. Then we hope that your soul in heaven may rest. But if you do draw us a bowl of the small, then down shall go butler, bowl, and all. Our next song is from Germany, actually, but it was a very popular Christmas song, and we have no idea whether Michael Pretorius, who wrote the song, was ever in England, or any information that Lo How a Rose was known in England. We do know, as I said in notes, that roses were a very important thing and were referred to frequently with Shakespeare. Lo, how a rose ere blooming from tender stem hath sprung, of Jesse's lineage coming, as men of old have sung. It came a flower bright amid the cold of winter, when half gone was the night. Quem pastores laudavere, quibus angeli dixere, absit vobis iam timere, natus est rex gloriae. The translation is, shepherds left their flocks astraying, God's command with joy obeying. When they heard the angels saying, Christ is born in Bethlehem. And again, this is another very popular carol, very early carol, which is likely was heard in many places in Europe, but we happen to have this Latin version from Germany. That arrangement is by John Rutter, a very well-known English composer who has set many, many old tunes and given them a very modern feel to them. Tomorrow shall be my dancing day. I with my true love did so chance to see the legend of my play, to call my true love to my dance. Sing, oh my love, oh my love, my love. This I have done for my true love. Our next carol is from Ireland, and as you can see, it is probably a very early carol, and music scholars think this because of the style of the music. And often it's known as Come Christians All, Come Christians All, for joy today. It's a very cheerful Christmas carol and goes on and on and on. And sometimes when you hear this interesting harmony, it doesn't sound like it's a cheerful Christmas carol, but the words are. another one of those that maybe people in England do. This is from a chorale tune written by Philip Nicolai. And this has been set by many, many composers, and we are playing an arrangement by Bach, and also playing what Michael Pretorius did to Bach's arrangement. So I would like to introduce our group. Just a moment here.
Too many papers.
First of all, I would like to have Caleb stand here. Caleb is one of our students from the Claremont Community School of Music. And many of us also play there, but we also are a separate group called the Claremont Early Music Ensemble. And Caleb is always very willing to play with us. And we're excited to have him. And now you can see two things he can do. And I'm trying to figure out how he could play saxophone with us. So this is Mark McKenzie. And Mark's wife, Barb McKenzie.
Yes.
And Susan Hitch. And Bill Wagner, my husband. And this is Lillian Liu. And if you notice, it looks like there's a lot more people in our group, but we've had some medical issues, like a broken leg. And
Two broken legs.
Two broken legs. Yes, 2 broken legs.
Or a Martin.
And another one with Bell's palsy, and makes it a little hard to play recorder. And so Lillian has had one rehearsal with us. And we are so excited to have her join the group.
She wasn't there for a while.
So I wanted to tell you a little bit about recorders that we're playing. Recorders, it's a family of woodwind music instruments, and it's got like a whistle mouthpiece here that makes it. That's the special thing about it, is the air that comes and blows through there. And the recorders are traditionally made of wood, but you'll see a lot of people playing plastic recorders now, which
Shakespeare didn't have.
Shakespeare did not have. But they are very useful to start out on, and if you had a whole bunch of people, you'd rather have them playing plastic recorders than different kinds of wooden instruments. And we won't tell you what Caleb asked us about how recorders tune. Oops, lost my note, there it is. The recorder was first documented in Europe in the Middle Ages, and it was very popular during the Renaissance and the Baroque periods. And then it sort of fell out of favor, because as the instruments in the orchestra could have a higher volume, you couldn't hear the recorders. But in the 20th century, early 20th century, there was quite a resurgence of interest in early music, particularly in England. Arnold Dolmetsch, who was an instrument maker, copied old instruments and started making facsimile recorders of the old ones, and really started the interest again, because a lot of people at that time really didn't know much music before Bach, if they were really well acquainted with Bach. So this instrument has been known by its English name for at least since the 14th century. I just learned that. The earliest use of the recorder, the word recorder, was actually written in French in the household accounts of King Henry IV in 1388. And it said, a fistula nomine recordeur, which means one pipe called a recordeur. And by the 15th century in England, they started calling it a recorder. So I've always wondered, why is it called a recorder? And it came from that French word. That French word, when translated, means to learn by heart, to repeat, to relate, to recite, or play music. And it became associated with the traveling minstrels who did not read music, played by ear, learned everything, and played it. So that's a little bit of an interesting bit of information that took a little bit of hunting to find why do we call them a recorder. And there is not another translation for recorder that works in other languages. So it can be a block flute.
Block flute.
And a flauto dolce,
Yeah.
and all of these other words. So recorder is the only word. But I would actually like to ask Mark to help me out a little bit about sizes of recorders.
Okay.
Because Mark and Bill have really big ones. So.
Oh, and I didn't bring my big one. Bill brought his big one. I'm going to start with the top of the soprano, and you can play that, and then that's what I played on one of the pieces. And it's very, when I played my big one, then have to squish my fingers on the little one, it's really interesting. And this is a C instrument, which means the lowest note is a C. And then we go to the alto. My wife has an alto there. And the alto is an F instrument. It's the next one down, and when all the fingers are down, it plays an F. And so can you play that, Laura? Just a little bit? Okay. And so then the next C instrument down is the tenor. And then Susan back here has a tenor. Okay, and it is also a C instrument, which means it's the same fingering as the soprano, and on the same note. And then we go down to the bass. This is my bass here, and this bass, a nice low tone, and all the fingers down is an F, the same as the alto. So they sort of skip instruments. And then we have the great bass, which is this one here. And that's also a C instrument, which means all fingers down is C. Now, we do not have all of the recorders, because there is a contrabass and a sub-contrabass. And the sub-contrabass, they have recorders up to 9 feet tall. And you notice that his great bass is called a knick-knack here, because imagine if you played that in the straight, it's a lot longer. It's easier to play because they have the bent neck. And see, mine has a bent neck. Susan has a tenor with a bent neck. And then this tenor doesn't have a bent neck. So this really depends. I mean, it's the same tone as that. And so I've seen somebody play the sub-contrabass, and I'm 6'7", and so it stands somewhere up here, and it's a very, very low tone, and of course, we don't have one.
Susan.
And Susan has a different bass. Do you notice hers has a metal tube that comes out of the top, and my wife has one too. That's the plastic Yamaha. No, that's not a Yamaha.
It's not Yamaha, it's an Alos.
Alos. And then it comes out of the top like that. And then you didn't.
I was gonna say on the sub-contrabass about
Yeah.
how long the tube is, it has to come
Yeah.
down to the player.
Yeah.
Because the tube starts up there and it's way
Yes,
down
it's
there.
way up, and then two comes down.
So you're standing like this playing.
And then we don't have one with us because Lee doesn't like to sound, although we did have one song that it plays on as a sopranino. And if you can imagine the piccolo for Stars and Stripes Forever, that's the, and we had a song, Colonel Bogey
Colonel Bogey.
March, and she was playing the sopranino. I can't play it because the fingers are too close together, and it's only about this long. So my fingers are too big for that.
So we have six sizes that we could play. The sopranino is only played on a very special occasion because it's pretty squeaky. But you know, lots of times you hear people say, oh, recorders are these squeaky instruments, and remind them what basses sound like. They're not squeaky instruments. And if you'd like to see a really interesting group that plays a really big recorder, it's the Royal Winds. You can look them up on YouTube, and it's 11 or 12 players. They play without a conductor, and they have a woman standing at the end with this monster recorder. They're a very good group.
Yeah. And so we call that a consort. So we have the soprano, alto, tenor, bass, great bass, and so that's a consort of recorders.
And if you think a tuba takes a lot of air, try playing one of those contrabasses.
Yeah.
Big time. That's okay.
Yes.
How does a penny whistle differ from the tiniest recorder?
These are worth 2 pennies.
Is that the kind that you pull the slide on?
No,
No.
it's the tin whistle.
A tenny whistle. Okay,
I
what?
just remember that James Galway, the great
Right.
flautist, did some songs on penny whistle.
I don't think they have a thumb.
How they fit in here.
I don't know, but I think it's the same like the tin whistle. If you
Yeah.
can get, it's just a small, less complicated instrument to play. But you blow it the same way, finger generally the same way. Because when we were in Williamsburg, our kids got really interested and they bought one. And we had a little book about tin whistle tunes.
I have one.
Same thing. You have one too?
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions about? Yes.
Do you ever play something written by Henry VIII?
Well, this is interesting. Yes, we have pieces by Henry VIII, and a lot of things have been attributed to him. And there's a funny story about Greensleeves, English myth, I would say, that was one of Henry VIII's women that had the green sleeves, and he wrote that in honor of her. It's not true, but it makes a good story. Yes, he actually did compose quite a bit, and he owned lots of instruments. He was quite a musician.
Are these your personal instruments, or do they belong to a collection?
They're ours.
They're ours.
They're ours. And all of us own one each of those.
Okay.
So I also have a
Except for the
bass.
great bass, we only have 2 great
We
basses.
have 2 great basses, and Lillian pretty soon is going to have a bass, right?
She has one
I
today.
lent her mine.
She has one today. She has one on loan today.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you think someone of Shakespeare's non-noble standing might have actually owned or played or perhaps been a member of the group playing music?
I think so, because there were lots of people, lots of small groups, lots of, like the traveling musicians. I think in a lot, and I would say probably in higher levels of society, it was more likely that more people played instruments. And you read about the number of instruments that some people had. Interesting thing is about viols, which are look like a cello, but you hold it on your knee. There's several sizes of them, but you see them played like this. These became very popular early on, and there's a professor at Pomona who is a wonderful viol player. His name is Malachi Bandy, and he and his wife frequently give fabulous programs, and he gave one about French viol music. And one of the things he said is that in the choir schools, the cathedral schools for the choir boys, they started teaching them to read music by teaching them to play viols. And I thought about that, and that seems really backwards to me, that you learn another instrument so you can read music to sing. But they would have a set of viols, just like we have a set of recorders. Viols come in different sizes. And William Byrd, who was a very prominent English composer, was known to have a whole set of viols. And so these especially the big cathedrals, they would have sets of viols, so they had lots of boys only, obviously in the choirs, learning to play viols. So over a period of time, viol music became very popular in England, and very fine composers started composing for viols that were, music out of the church. And that was kind of interesting to think of how many of those instruments were around, to have boys learn to play a viol so that you can read the notes to sing.
Another perspective on this is long before TVs. And how did you entertain yourself? You got out your recorders and files and music instead of going and looking at CNN.
And there's lots of artwork of musical groups, especially if you Google Renaissance musical art, and you'll find all these paintings of musical groups. So I think, yes, it's quite possible that he might have played an instrument. So,
Well, and Shakespeare puts lots of music in his plays, lots of music, and intimates that they're playing instruments too. So I think that there was lots of music going on in his plays.
just today, I read a review in the Recorder magazine of an album that was just put out, a CD, and it is music from Shakespeare's time. This consort is playing it and explaining that it's music of that time, or it's music that somehow is mentioned in a play, or instruments in the play, and it's supposed to be a really lovely CD. And I just read that, and I thought I might be tempted to get that, because I thought that was very interesting, the research that they did. And some things that were only keyboard pieces, they have set for a larger set of instruments. So it sounded like a very interesting CD. And I thought that was interesting as I was reading through the magazine, and I see the word Shakespeare, and I thought, oh yeah, talk about Shakespeare again. So, okay.
Excellent.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.